after this game.
I know.
Hey, everyone.
Hey, everybody. La familia.
Ciao. We were debating how much we should Italian it up today.
Yeah, I wanted to show some pictures of my family, a la familia. And it's not kind of coming out here. I got a beautiful, here it is, beautiful picture. This is one of those beautiful old pictures. Those are my grandparents. Can't see them very well, but maybe the video, if it's uploaded to YouTube, if it did go up well, then I can just check it out. Hello there, Peace. You know, Three Stooges has dropped out forever. He waited for a long time for a video. They tried to change the time on. Actually, I tried to cancel altogether, and it didn't cancel it as a premiere. And so he waited for it, but it showed up an hour later, you know, and it's like, I am so sorry that we lost Three Stooges. He was such a good, faithful, he's always been there. And so, but we've got Peace and we've got Black Samurai. And let me get to the studio here.
By the way, I'm unable to reply in the comments, so don't take it like I'm ignoring you. I actually, there's no place for me to respond to comments, so I'm sorry about that. But good to see you, Black Samurai.
Go to YouTube.
No, okay. Oh yeah, I could do that. But yeah.
You go to yeah. Then you can write all you want. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make this. Actually, I could keep it private. Actually, doesn't make any.
Well, the more you mess around with that, the more you start shuddering and basically the worse your feed is. So I think we should just jump into doing the show. You're completely frozen now for me.
Oh yeah, because my my speed, my what do you call it? The mobile device is the Wi-Fi. I used up all my high-speed Wi-Fi because my Wi-Fi at the house doesn't work, so it's a pain in the neck. So where are we here? Oh, okay. So I'm going to I think I just read the story and see if there's pictures about this. No, let's just cut that out. And what's this here? Okay, we can cut that out. Leave site, leave. And where's this thing here? Okay. We could, I could read that. I could put this. I could put. What's a what?
Hey.
I'm going to share the screen. How about that? With invite. I think it's this right here. Share screen. And share screen. It should just, I click on it like all the other YouTube people out there. Just click on the screen they want to share. And it works for other people. Okay. Can you see that?
Yes.
Let me see here. Okay, why don't we make it big enough? I want it big enough for people to read. Is that big enough, or should I just cut us out?
No, it's fine either way.
Either way, you're right. It's fine. Okay. So which text is this? No, I'm sharing the screen, but where the hell is, what am I sharing here? Here we go. Okay, let's see. The grisly story of one of America's largest lynchings. Actually, before we get to here, let me get back and talk to the people for a second. And we'll click on this. All right. Let's get to this point. This point, the point where we have America's largest lynching. There's a point before that got the Italians to this place. And it's not like they did anything wrong. In fact, can you hear, am I coming through clear?
Yeah.
Okay. The Italians didn't do anything wrong. In fact, we're only talking about Southern Italians here. And as far as the connection of why we have Columbus Day is connected solely to what happened to Southern Italians. Why do I say not Northern Italians? Well, Southern Italy was, Northern Italy was Southern Italy. They had industries. They had schools for all their children. And so you could go to school for free if you're a kid. And so Northern Italy, you've got the nobility, a lot of wealthy people. And of course, they sent their kids to the best schools. But what happened was it was Southern Italy that figured out industry, all sorts of farming and that they're making steel, they had all this industry going, and they were getting affluent, but affluent more like the American way. So what happened, and this was occurring in the mid 19th century, so mid 1800s. And at that time, the rulers of Southern Italy were the Bourbons, who originally came from France. They ruled France and Spain. And then a cadet branch went and ruled Southern Italy. And it was called the Kingdom of the Two Sicilies. First, it was the Kingdom of Naples and the Kingdom of Sicily. And then when the Bourbons took over, they changed it to the Kingdom of the Two Sicilies. The word Sicily means scythe. Because in Sicily, they used to grow a lot of grain. And so like the sickle that, the Grim Reaper you see using, that's what Sicily actually means. And right now, so my family came from the Provincia de Bari, which Bari is on the east side. It's not Sicily. It's facing Greece. In fact, it was settled by Greeks. And it was right. It's on the water, just beautiful. The Basilica de San Nicola is there, and that's where St. Nicholas's bones. The Italian sailors went and took the bones from Turkey because the Muslims were coming in and they were going to destroy the basilica and then destroy the bones because you're not supposed to have a shrine. So the Italian sailors were very smart. The merchants went there and they took the bones and brought them back to Bari, Italy, and built a basilica around it. And his tomb is below the basilica, but there's another church down there. And it was my great-grandfather, which I don't have a picture of, who did the marble work in that tomb, and he died doing the marble work. But that's going to be another story when we tell a biography I'm going to do about the real St. Nicholas. He's called the Wonder Worker and the patron saint of neglected and abused children. He is wonderful. This is what St. Francis, this is what a saint is. He was born wealthy and he used his money to give to the poor and to keep children out of slavery and sex slavery. But anyway, getting back to southern Italy. So Sicily, Italians are funny. Italians are very funny because even though they're Catholic, and if you go to Italy, it's, of course, this is Columbus Day, so we're going to talk about the Italians. So I'm sorry if you're going to have a problem with me talking about the Italians. I forget the little stand that this goes in just rolled away. Well, anyway, this is the flag of Sicily. This is the Trinitaria, and that's Medusa in the middle. And she's got some wheat there because that's what they used to grow. The Greeks also settled Sicily. And there's some kind of a temple to Athena that they put up there. And you see the three legs. And something about that is good luck. And you see the three and the magic of the three. It's supposedly, see, Italians kept things if it was good luck. Even though it might be the pagan gods of the Romans or the Greeks, they kept it if it was good luck. So they put it up. They didn't pray to Medusa or they didn't pray to the Trinitaria, but they know that it brings good luck. They also hung brass or iron, very well endowed phalluses outside their houses, because that was also that way you could ward away the evil. Hello, Three Stooges, how you doing? We're talking about you. We thought you were gone forever.
Hey.
It was the phallus that warded away the evil eye. So you'd see during the Renaissance, you saw men would wear cod pieces, huge, but they felt that they always were afraid that the evil eye was going to take your fertility away and make your husband not be able to procreate, which is a very bad thing. So that's why it very preserved in Herculaneum and Pompeii, you're going to see these phalluses hanging outside the houses, and there's mudras in southern Italy, and people think that this is the devil horns. It's not the devil horns. Everything Italians do with their hands, when they do a mudra, is that one, and there's a monofigo. These mudras, somebody's give you the evil eye, and they're going to take your ability to, procreate, what men have to do to procreate. They go like, if you do this first, you take the power away from them. That stops it. They think that of course, people in the times past thought that sex was very powerful emotionally and physically, but doing that created life. So to the ancient Italians, it was a very powerful thing. So if you did this first, it nullified the evil eye. But you know what see what this is? See what this looks like? So I got 2 fingers down here like this and 2 fingers like this. It's not, you see that? That's the men's legs and then the woman's legs. Do you see that? Has anybody seen that before? And monofigo, what do you think that is? It's not a fig. Or you do that, or this also means but that means it's the same thing.
It's all sexual. Yeah.
It's all of it is, and say, oh, it's all magic and the witches mudras. It's every Italian does it, and every Italian has these phalluses, huge iron phalluses hanging outside. Sometimes they put chimes hanging off of them. It's anyway. This is the flag, but anyway, Southern Italian brought themselves up. And it isn't that the royal houses there didn't have that much money. They weren't like the British. Other royal houses are ridiculous. The Italian much, well, not poorer, but much less, a little more humble.
They didn't have marauders going through there every couple hundred years and just burning everything down. That might have helped.
Yeah, well, but see, what happened was the Kingdom Umberto of Savoy, the Savoy House, which was the kingdom of northern Italy, which is green. If you don't know the colors, green is northern Italy. And so there was the Kingdom of Savoy, and there was also the House of Este, which also disappeared. When they took away southern Italy, the House of Este went away too. It's another biography I'm going to do of Lucrezia Borgia. She married Alfonso Este. And so his dukedom, his kingdom, which was like not really cute, it was very small. But that also went away. The Savoy House absorbed that too. The Kingdom of Sardinia and the Kingdom of Malta, and there was also, I forget his name, came from Brazil, because they were tormenting, because they were doing a lot of bad stuff. They were like ruling Brazil at one point. All three of them came down on southern Italy, which is much. There's the Papal State, which is white. The white in the middle is the Papal States, and the Pope rules that. And no king is above the Pope. The Pope is higher than the king. So what they did was, and it must have been the okay by the Pope, didn't say no on this one. It's just there's Sicily and the part of the boot that looks like the shoe. That's southern Italy. It's small, but they were doing very, very well. So they came down and they took all the industry. They literally stole everything, and they marched them up a huge number up to northern Italy in the Alps, where it was cold, and imprisoned them. Southern Italians aren't used to the cold, so more Italians died during that and froze to death or died in the war than all the wars Italy ever had combined. It was a genocide, and it left Southern Italians impoverished to this day, and they had to work for wealthy people, and they were always in debt, and they could never pay it off. And then your children were in debt for where you were in debt, and you slaved for the landowner, and there's nothing you could do to pay it back. It's kind of like in this country, crop sharing. People would go from plantation to plantation after the Civil War. Either you were the freed slaves or the poor whites, like Elvis. That's what his family was, and they could never pay the owner of the land back because they never made enough. And so they would leave in the middle of the night. So similar to that, your children and then the children's children, the debt just kept accumulating. So when America opened its doors, it basically said it opened its doors because there was more work than there were people. And there was a lot of work that was life or death, really dangerous work. Like Italians would work building buildings, and they would work in the basement of the building. And then as they were building it, it would fall in, and then the Italians would get killed. The worst jobs that you can think of were there for the Italians. So either you came and you had to know somebody in America that was going to put you up and pay for you, because there was no welfare. There was no handouts at all whatsoever. And you could not be a burden on the state. And they did not want homeless people. So when you came to this country, and that's why the Southern Italians said, hey, there's hope. There's hope in America. Maybe we can go there and make money, pay off our debt, or just leave altogether. But there was hope for a future, the Italians thought. But so there were Italians in this country that had come to this country and that became American citizens. But you had to prove you had a place to stay. The people that you were staying with were going to pay your way. They were going to pay for your food. You had to go to the police once a week to prove that you weren't doing any crime either. And you had to show that you had work waiting for you. So when you went to apply for this work, they said, hey, this college, some Ivy League college, and that's what my grandfather worked for, was looking for X number of people to build their music hall. Beautiful job. It was one of the most beautiful buildings on the campus. So he thought he would come to this country on his own. His wife and my Uncle Angelo stayed in Italy. And he was going to come back. And he was going to make money. He was going to come back. He had no intention of staying in America because Americans, as he said, spoke incorrectly. He knew American. He knew English, but he didn't want to speak it. But my grandfather was very intelligent, and they took him out of the school. Somehow he's going to school. Makes no sense because everything was destroyed, even the schools. And they put him in seminary because he was so intelligent. So he learned to speak 8 or 9 languages. And as a priest, you had to speak all these languages, but he was also extremely intelligent. So when he came to this country, he picked up English very easily, but he didn't want to speak it. And all the Italians, because they destroyed the school system, didn't know they could speak, and they could only speak the dialect, not the pure Italian, but they couldn't write. So my grandfather wrote all the letters home for all the Italians. He was a very, very good man. And for a man that was highly educated, he went to seminary, he got out of seminary, and he said, I think I'm going to get married. He didn't want to be a priest. And he said, find me a good woman. I don't care anything about her, just as long as she's a good woman. It turns out she yelled at him all the time, and he was afraid of her. But so they found a woman she lived in Turi, and that's where the Basilica of San Nicola was. He lived in Noci, which means nuts. So half my family comes from nuts. So he married her, and and Antonietta died. She was the firstborn. She died at 2, and then they had Angelo. And if the thing will play, I'll show you what Angelo looks like, and I'll show you what my handsome. I got a beautiful family. My handsome uncle, Uncle Vic, who supposedly I have cousins all over this country because he's so handsome. He looked like Superman. He got a lot of women. He should have been a movie star, is really what he should have been. But anyway, so when they were in this country, they came to the north. Even though they were in the north, you see, what happened in America was the northern Italians didn't leave the southern Italians alone. They destroyed southern Italy, and it's poor to this day. And the nice thing is if you go to Sicily, there's no like shelters for dogs. It's warm all the time. And all the women in Italy, whatever food they have left, they cook the food for their family. Any food they have left after the dinner, they bring it to the dogs that have no homes because they kind of live outside, and all the women feed them. So they kind of take care of the dogs. So there's no such thing as a shelter or a kill shelter or a pound like that. They live free, they live in warmth, and they're really taken care of, and they eat lots of good food.
I was going to say those dogs eat better than most humans, yeah.
Well, this is after the women cook for their family, and in my family, my grandmother was the best cook because She, her mother, my grandmother was nobility, but when my grandfather died, my great grandfather died, the boys got the money and the education, and her mother was nobility, so she didn't know how to cook or sew or knit or anything. So they sent her, my grandmother, and there's no dowry, nobody wanted her. They sent her to the nuns, and the nuns taught you how to cook. In fact, the nuns were the best cooks. If you learned from the nuns, you knew all what we would call gourmet cooking here. And she could cook like nobody that you would find here. My mother refused to learn everything. She didn't want to cook fish. So my grandparents were very poor. My grandfather was given a job at the local Ivy League college as a hod carrier. And a hod carrier, this highly intelligent man, hod carrier is, you carry the bricks on your back. So he had to hunch like this, and they loaded bricks on his back. And he had to walk them over to where they were building the music hall. Sage Hall is the name of the music hall. And so his back was never the same after that. And here he was, a guy who could have worked at the UN, knowing all these languages, highly educated. His grandchildren went to college or became doctors and all sorts of things. Millionaires in the businesses that they started. Unbelievable. I don't want to get into all that, but they're all highly intelligent. I'm the only one who didn't go to college. I wanted to. My father said I couldn't. There's no way you can get there. You're not going. But all of them went, and they're all highly educated, and they all have a lot of money. But my father was poor, and so I'm like set apart from the rest of my family. So it is very sad how the Italians were treated.
Hello? Has Felina frozen up for everyone else? Hey, Anthony. I don't know what's going on here.
Yeah.
You froze up.
This is what you call when the cable company never, I don't have cable, but I have high speed, I'm supposed to have high speed Wi-Fi. But they never fix it. Nobody ever fixes it. They come, they go, they don't fix it. And I have very, very, very bad Wi-Fi. And so my phone uses up, so the Wi-Fi is so bad, my phone uses up the amount of Wi-Fi that you get free every month. And my computer is trying to connect to that.
Yeah.
Because it's better than the Wi-Fi here. Okay, that's connected. Let me try to reconnect to, now it wants.
Go to the library of that Ivy League college and bum off their Wi-Fi, I think.
Okay, you're back. We're back. Okay. All right. All right. Now we're not on the cell phone. Hopefully here.
Yeah. By the way, we have a new person in the chat. Anthony says his father is from Sicily.
Oh, hello. We're just talking about Sicily. Did you see the flag? That's the Sicilian flag, the Trinicaria. And I also have a spoon over there with the Trinicaria on. It's Italian silver spoon, and it's got the Trinicaria on it. And maybe later on I'll go with it's should be right there. And I'll show you it. It's an antique. So where was I? Was I at the college?
Yeah, your grandfather who was basically working as a human hand truck.
Yeah. And my grandmother and the way she cooked. Well, he got hardly any pay at all whatsoever. Of course, like I said, there's no welfare. You have to have a sponsor. So when he got here, he found a little place for his family. He ended up having 6 children. 2 died. Frankie also died as a baby. My grandmother, though they were very poor, my grandfather would make wine and grappa, and then my grandmother would cook, sew, knit. She made her own patterns. My family looked like she made beautiful soup, and I mean she sewed like a professional tailor. Yeah. And he was earning nothing, but because she was such a good cook and she made tons of pasta and all sorts of gourmet fish dishes, which my mother refused to learn because she doesn't like fish. Only the haddock one. That's the only one she learned. But she sad that she didn't learn everything, because I would have learned everything, but I really didn't know. She died 4 days before I was my first birthday, so I never really knew my grandmother. She was dying right here, in fact, in this room. But my grandparents, though they were extremely poor, kept their door open for anyone who was hungry in the town. And they tried to open up their own business, except there was a man, and I'm not going to say his nationality, because I don't want anybody to diss a nationality just because somebody did something very bad to my grandparents. He said he was going to help them open up a store. They were going to open up a store and have their own business, try to do the American thing and make some money. They had a family. They're extremely poor, but they ate like kings, because he made the wine and he made bread and he blessed it because he knew how to do that, because he learned how to be a priest. And he said, "Give me all your money." So he gave him every penny he had, and he left town. The guy left town. He was a white guy. Italians were not considered white. Well, Southern Italians weren't considered white, and that's part of the problem, because people looked at them as pagans, the way the Catholic beliefs, the way they believed, and that they were Black. And the reason why people said that, they were dark skinned. That's true. They were dark skinned. My grandmother was very dark, and my grandfather was considered medium. But me next to my grandfather is literally night and day. And my mother always said to me, "I don't know why you're so white. Your father's got some Scottish in him, I think. It must be your father's fault." And she was never a hippie. She was like 40 when she had me, or in her 40s, something like that. And I mean, so she was never a hippie. She was not into, and she wasn't a liberal. She wasn't a Democrat. And we're talking about poor people. So the idea that the Democrats or the poor went to the Democrats. My grandfather worked for the Democrat Party because they told them that the Democrats were for the poor people. I guess because of what FDR did. And he didn't realize that the Democrats in Jim Crow South, in the South, the Italians, Southern Italians, not Northern, were subject to Jim Crow law. They couldn't marry a white person. They could not sit.
Okay, it looks like it's just me here by myself. I apologize for the technical difficulties. Thank you everyone in the chat for bearing with us, and a virtual hug right back to you, Black Samurai. Yeah, I did not have the ability to hello.
No, damn, it'll never get fixed. There must be a demon in the wall. But nobody wants to. I don't think anybody wants to work anymore.
No.
You know what I mean? It just that's not like everybody has Wi-Fi. You go these places, you can connect to the Wi-Fi, and everybody's using it in like the big buildings and offices. And I am the only person here. And I can't. This is the most expensive Wi-Fi that you can buy.
So go to the college. Go to the college and bum off their Wi-Fi. Do your show in their library.
Go to the all-girl, very, 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 very Democrat, progressive, where they hate white people now. It's unbelievable. It's unbelievable how bad it is. It isn't like, you're a girl. We're all girls. It's the whole CRT thing is gone. It went crazy there before it went any crazy across the country. And people have lost their jobs there because they were I don't want to get into it, but there's a YouTube channel, and the woman who worked there told her story, and she's got a channel. She'd been on Tucker too, and she was on Tim Pool. Anyway, let's get back to so.
But by the way, maybe a Sticks, Axe, and Hammer will take the demon from your wall. He might.
No.
Good use.
Sticks can't do anything. He just edits the books. I don't think he really does much other than there's some kind of predictive thing. It's called, begins with an N. He said that it actually works really well. That's where he gets his predictions that come true. So I don't know. I don't talk to Sticks anymore. I used to regularly. I mean, just text, like messages, not once in a while video, but not anymore. That's bye-bye. Anyway, I guess there are a lot of things going on that I understand. Anyway, but God bless him and keep him well, and then make sure everything turns out okay. Anyway, don't say Sticks. I have to keep my concentration going here. Okay, so people don't know, and then you couldn't marry a white woman if you were Italian, Black. You're just like Cajun country, that you were part. People in Cajun country, see, on my father's side, the largest concentration of people with my father's surname or my surname is in Cajun country. Mm-hmm. And it's because they were already mixed. Like France sent them over to Canada, get rid of them. And then from Canada, they had to move to Cajun country, which then you are subject to Jim Crow laws, and you cannot marry white people.
Just as an aside, my Irish grandfather was actually an illegal immigrant. He actually came up through Louisiana. So yeah,
He went through Louisiana. Yeah. Okay. So I'll call immigration and they'll deport him. Exactly. Definitely. Well, anyway, so that
dreamer who's really floundering, but yeah. Okay.
But so the Northern Italians came over here and literally destroyed the Southern Italians over here too. So they understood. They're Italians that lived up here, and as long as you stay with the you have no idea that unless you go to the South, that you are subject to Jim Crow law, and it's the Democrat Party. One thing I was telling, I remembered the other day, which we forget so much why things are and what happens. We have this idea that history changes because we forget, and they kind of blanket every white person as every white person is a racist because people think that the KKK, who are all Democrats, accepted any white person. They let any white person sit at the counter. But it's not
or what we nowadays would call white.
Yeah, what we nowadays call white. People have no idea that the KKK, it was, my mother described it to me because she went to the South. She went to the South. She went to black churches. She was not allowed to stay in white hotels. She was not allowed to ride in a white cab. She was not allowed to go to white churches. She had to stay in the black section, or now we say African American, but then it was black, or actually it was a different word. It was the French word, which I still won't say because who knew? Even though it's not bad, and it's the same word that's basically in Spanish, actually. But anyway, God, I kind of lost my train here. That people have no idea, and some Italians up here, and they became Democrats, have no idea. But that's what it was. It was you had to be a WASP. It wasn't, they didn't accept you unless they knew you. They didn't mark you as white. White meant white Anglo-Saxon Protestant.
Yeah.
You were pure. They considered you pure. If you were Catholic, you weren't a part of the white gang. You weren't considered black, but you weren't considered their kind of white.
Yeah.
It was a whole different, let's say, breaking people up into communities. That was a community of that was an exclusive community.
Yeah.
That we're now painting every white person in the country. And this is probably one of the most important things that I'm saying on my channel here, that I should have said first, but I'm getting to now because we had to, the reason why the Italians why we have Columbus Day, what the Southern Italians endured in this country started in because that kicked them out of Southern Italy, and the damn Northerners came over here, and they destroyed them over here too. It's kind of like when I went to school, when you change from one grade school to another, to the middle school and high school, and you don't know these people, they come in from other schools, and then you have somebody, the people, you're getting beat up, and it's more than picked on. You're getting beat up and sworn at, and you know how kids are very cruel if they think you're different in some way. And then you go to another school, and all of a sudden people you have no idea come up to you and start doing the same thing. And they go, "You don't know me. I heard about you from my friends," which is, you're vulnerable, and we know we can do this to you and get away with it and kick you down the stairs. So it's kind of like the Italians came here thinking that they're going to get a new start and get away from the people who persecuted them, who essentially turned them into, considered them black, because the boot, the bottom of the shoe was the bottom of the boot in Sicily, actually did used to connect with Africa. But the oceans have been raising for millions of years now. It's just the coastlines. Things have been shrinking, and it's nothing to do with
that all
100 years. As like, and people don't realize that
the entire Mediterranean actually flooded in. That was once a solid landmass that was below sea level, and the entire Mediterranean Sea flooded in at some point in geology.
Well, Egypt used to be, that whole Sahara Desert used to be an ocean at one time. This is long before it was a tropical forest. It was an ocean. That's the reason why you have all that sandstone, and you have fossilized creatures, and there's some alligators, and some you find like in the desert bones, is because that actually used to be an ocean at one time. And Italy, out of all the land masses, Italy used to be Italy, except for Sicily, which is the bedrock is granite. There was a sea, a prehistoric sea, where Italy was, and all the life died in that sea, fell to the bottom, and turned into marble. And so the bedrock raised up, and the bedrock that raised up was marble. You see, the African plate smashed into the Italian or the European plate, and that's why you have the Alps pushed. Actually, at the top of the Alps is the African plate, but Italy has the mountains. The Alps in Italy are all marble. If you take the growth off of them, the dirt or trees, whatever, you would have gleaming marble. And some mountains are pink marble. You would have gleaming white and gleaming crystallized pink marble mountains. That's what the whole country is marble, except for Sicily, tip of Sicily, which is granite, which is mostly all the land masses that raise to the surface are granite. But Italy is a different story, because that area used to be an ocean, and instead of granite, you've got sea life that didn't turn into sandstone, turned into marble, pink and white marble. And Donald Trump's first wife, Ivana, went over to Italy and bought an entire pink mountain and brought it over, and they sliced it up. And if you walk, I've never been there, walk into Trump Towers, the ceiling, the walls, the floor are all pink marble. She bought a mountain. It's like, oh my God. So that's how it's almost like a fairy tale. It's almost like fairyland. You took everything off, all the dirt and everything, and you would have this, you'd be living in New Age crystal land. The New Agers will tell you, the land of Mu and Lemuria, and all the crystals that were there, which is interesting because in Rome, is the city of the seven hills, and the city of seven hills is Lemuria, is this ancient place that the New Agers talk about, and the Lemurian crystals that were lost. And it's interesting that, they celebrate. It was a day of celebration when that continent went under. It's not Atlantis, it's something else. It went under. And it's interesting that Italy, of all places, is actually a crystal country. It's the bedrock is crystal, so it might be it's Italy. It's just like, because Italy was an ocean, and then the marble raised to the surface, versus like, here's the island and it went down. It's like, I think Italy, that's what I say. And 7 is the mystical number. I say Italy's the mystical place. All but the north. All but the demons settled into the Crystal Alps is what happens. You could write a fairy tale. So the Southern Italians suffered terribly. And my grandmother used to, my grandfather grew all the vegetables. and he would turn over. He would turn over with not with a plow. He took a shovel and turned one at a time. It's like a meditation. And he would work in the garden all day, and then he would sit there and watch the garden grow and smoke a cigarette and watch the garden grow. Well, you heard of sun-dried tomatoes. Well, there's something called conserva, which is, to me, one of the most delicious things that you ever taste in your life. I mean, and you take it's basically, it's cooked down to a paste, and then you spread the thinnest layer on focaccia. You see, Italians, they figured out how to make things that would last through the winter, that would just last all year, that didn't need refrigeration, and also didn't even need to be cooked on a stove. She would take all the tomatoes and hot red peppers, and you would put them in these vats and cook them in the sun, like sun-dried tomato. You cook them in the sun until it cooks down to a paste. It goes from something that looks like a sauce down to an extremely, oh, I'm good looking tonight. Thank you. I've got my hair a little bit differently. But it cooks down to a very, very thick paste, and it lasts a little bit, just like if you make pesto. Pesto, you need the tiniest bit. It's concentrated, got all the stuff in it, and it lasts you forever. You can put it on, you could feed your family with the pasta, with the pesto, night after night after night. And the Italians have a way of making things like this. I mean, it's Southern Italians, I should say. They cook differently in the north. They use a lot of creams and a lot of butters. It's a different way of cooking, because the Southern, you've got the ocean, you've got, you can grow vegetables most of the year and a lot of fruit. And then there's lemon season. Lemons this big. And so they're not as dependent on eating meat in the South. And they use olive oil versus butter in the north, olive oil in the south.
Well, what Americans think of as Italian food is not even really Italian food, but it's Southern.
You know what it is? It's the kind of food that we think of Italian food is actually called wedding food, because you don't kill the animal unless it's a very, very special, rare occasion. Otherwise, most of the time, it's vegetarian. Because you kill the animal, it's gone. You don't get the milk from the cow. You don't get the wool from the sheep. It's like once you kill the animal, it's gone. Otherwise, the animal lives, and you can still eat and clothe your family. It's smarter to keep the animal alive. People in the mountains, that's where pizza was invented, in the mountains of Italy. And it's like you just don't kill the animal. What pizza is, I'll tell you quickly how pizza was invented. It's very different, and this is how poor people make food go a long way. I see that everything I'm telling you is like food that goes a long, long, long way. Whatever they cooked for dinner the next night, they kept everything. There's no refrigeration. Whatever you cook, doesn't matter what it is, pasta, I'm sure it's pasta with sauces or something, whatever it is, you chopped it up, you rolled out some dough, you spread it over the dough, whether it had cheese or not. It probably did, because you need some protein. And then you throw it in the brick oven. That's original pizza. That's the original pizza. And so when the Italians came over, the Southern Italians came over here, I don't remember the guy's name. I was going to grab it tonight for the video. He opened up a restaurant, and he wanted to make pizza, like he came from the hills. He wanted to make pizza. But pizza was kind of different. Like I said, whatever you cook the night before, you chop. Just like minestrone. You know what minestrone is? Yeah. You know, make minestrone? Quick.
I buy minestrone.
You don't know. Okay. All right. Very simple. Same way. It's very similar to how you make the pizza. Whatever you have left over in your refrigerator, you pull it out and you put it in a pot. That's minestrone. See how things are like.
Yeah.
And you can add. Obviously, you take this whatever it is, and then you're adding water to it, making soup out of it, and you can add pasta to it, or you add something to it that you have that is very cheap. See how you can take good food, and then you extend the life. You make it last longer. And I think that's genius. I'm sure people from all those countries had to figure things out and how to survive. That you're poor, but my family ate well, and they wore these beautiful clothes. Somewhere there's the pictures, and one day I'll show you all the pictures of how well they dressed for being extremely poor, just because my grandmother learned how to sew from the nuns. She would have married nobility had her father didn't die. They would have picked somebody. It wouldn't have been my grandfather, obviously. But let's see. Oh, the conservatives, they hated my grandmother. And even though my grandmother opened her doors to everybody, she even sent my mother to go on Shabbos to go eat with the Jewish family. She said, go over there. They loved her, and she learned Yiddish, and celebrated Shabbos. So there was no Italians, don't like the Jew. There's no discrimination at all. My grandmother did everybody. It was like there wasn't anybody that she didn't like or was a racist. She fed everybody. But my grandparents fed everybody. But see, there's the French didn't like the Italians, and of course the Irish didn't either. And my grandmother, they had vats. All this, how long it takes to cook the tomatoes and the hot peppers. And the tomato is the jewel of the summer. Tomato is only a tomato in the summer when it's cooked, when it's grown home. It's not grown from one of these farms or in a hothouse. It doesn't taste the same. So this delicious, beautiful, made with love, grown with love, cooked in the sun. You put the vats out there. And this was good. She wasn't going to just feed her poor family, her poor children. This was also to feed the neighborhood. Anybody who was hungry, doesn't matter who you were, the door was open. They hated my grandmother so much, they'd spit at her every day. They threw stuff at her. They threw stuff at her head. She cried every day. They called her horrible names. And then they took a big pail of sand and threw it all over the conserva. And my grandmother couldn't stop crying. And it was so heartbreaking every day. She's trying to feed her children. They're completely impoverished. The Ivy League school that's getting all this money, that's got so many billions that I hear, it would make you sick. And they also have artwork that they just collect. Mm-hmm. And now that I hear that they're keeping it underwater, like frozen, like near Sweden or Norway. There's like an underground vaults.
Yeah, like
they're so wealthy, and they paid my grandfather nothing. And there they are, giving and feeding the neighborhood. Well, when the guy stole, my grandfather found out that the guy stole every penny that he had. He was ashamed. He's, it's like, should he have stayed? Should he have stayed a priest? See, in Italy, they expected priests to have a girlfriend because guys who weren't married something funny's going on. So priests used to be married up to the year 10,500. Not 10,000, 1,500, right? Yeah, we're 2,000 years. Priests used to be married, and then they changed the law. And then when they changed the law, the Italians said, that's not good. A man needs a husband. And I know, a man needs a wife. Oh, wait a second.
You have to go forward a few more hundred years for that.
A man needs a woman. And men can't be celibate. The Italians were smart. Look at the stuff that's going on. So they expected them to have a mistress, but my grandfather said, I'm not going to do that to a woman. That isn't right. I'm going to marry her. I'm going to have children. I'm going to do the right thing. So they would have grown up they would have had a very good upbringing. He was intended to go all the way up. They wanted him to go all the way up. And he chose poverty because he wanted to do the right thing for a woman, a right thing. You don't make a woman your mistress, and you don't have children out of wedlock. He thought that was wrong, but here he was, he made the wrong choice. And every penny he had was stolen. And so he came home and he went up the stairs. My grandmother was listening, and she goes, sounds something funny up there. It doesn't sound right. So she goes upstairs. He's about to hang himself, because this is what they endured in this country. And of course, before what was going on, up to the year 1885, the barbaric pirates from Africa were taking slaves from Europe, castrating the men and making sex slaves out of the women. And they were still selling white Europeans on the auction block in Africa. And never mind the strong, powerful tribe selling the weaker, taking the weaker. They took more slaves for themselves from the other tribes, the vulnerable tribes who weren't as strong, than they actually brought to the shore to sell in the slave trade that went around the world. So you've got Europe from Iceland all the way down to the Mediterranean. They took up to at least 2 million European slaves. And then the Barbary pirates were the Moors, the Barbary pirates, and also there's the Saracen Knights who were in Egypt, were still taking African slaves long after the slave trade and long after the West had abolished it, and the Western countries like Britain and America went to try to stop these ships and save the lives of these slaves these certain empires were still taking, and people don't realize that and we have 40 million slaves in the world today. So I'm adding that on because people don't. And of course, the Polynesians and the Native Americans, they all took slaves. And it wasn't okay, as according to PBS said, it's okay because it wasn't racist because they were the same race. The Native Americans also took African slaves as slaves. But then again, we also had 10,000 slaves, African slaves that were owned by free Africans right from the beginning. First slave owner in America was a freeborn slave named Anthony Johnson. and he was the first, and he owned African slaves, and he was from Africa, but he was freeborn in America. And people don't realize, we have this very myopic view on, because we haven't lived through history, or we live through history, and in about 10, 20 years, what we remembered as the truth, we forget. Like, racism was born out of slavery. It wasn't the cause of slavery. People don't realize that. And the kind of racism that we had in the South, which was run by, they happened to be Democrats, that was all Democrat, was that special kind of racism that you didn't see in other places of the world. Like, even when Britain took slaves, traded the slaves, but before that they had their own people as slaves, poor English people, poor Irish people. They got rid of the Irish because they were weak and dying, and they sent them to the colonies. And they were so starved and so weak that they never saw, if they say, oh, they were actually indentured servants, they worked them to death because they didn't pay that much for them. Because they didn't pay that much for them, they were worth nothing. So they literally could work them to death. And they were so weak to begin with, they never saw freedom. They never saw, okay, it's the end of your indentured servitude. That never happened. People don't realize that. Though African slaves were very expensive, and they didn't work them the same way because they paid so much money for them. America took 500,000, which is awful, in the slave trade. South America took. See, they got 95% of the transatlantic slave trade, South America. America got 5% of the transatlantic slave trade, which were the most evil ones of all. Why? 5% equates to 500,000. And unlike in the Ottoman Empire, Barbary, Egypt, Moors, all that stuff, the Muslim slave trade, which started 1,400 years ago, they didn't, when they took African slaves and they took Europeans, white Europeans, they castrated the men and they made sex slaves out of the women. And when a child was born of the union, they killed it immediately. So in this country, that's why if you go over to Arabia, those countries, you'll say, well, where are if they took all these slaves, where are they? They died. Yeah. Only 1 out of every 30 men who was castrated survived, because they didn't want the men having sex with the women. They didn't want to propagate them. So that's why why they had to keep taking so many, millions and millions and millions. I mean, untold millions. Deaths of, like I said, up to 1885, they were still selling white Europeans in Africa on auction block. But in America, a different story happened. See, South America took 9,500,000 slaves, the African slave trade. America got 5%, which was 500,000. And in America, unlike that, for that particular, what we would call that, community, or in all, Arabia, Ottoman Empire, Barbary pirates, Saracen knights in Egypt.
Civilization.
Those people. Okay, that community or communities, we'll call it. America, the West had African slaves. They had white slaves. The world had slavery since the dawn of time. And everybody, India and China and all these countries, there's over 40 million slaves in the world today, more than there ever was at the height of the slave trade. And I want to point out that a very important.
You can thank the Obama administration for
for starting it back up in Libya. Yeah, they're still they're back on the auction blocks, and yeah, that's right. ISIS destroyed Bush for destroying Iraq, and then Obama removed all the troops from Iraq, and that's when ISIS came in, and then they moved into Libya. But Obama bombed Libya for 10 months, and then took down Gaddafi, and that's when the auction blocks and cages. There was still 7 million slaves in Africa today. Yeah. Before that, there were 7 million slaves, African slaves owned by other Africans. Okay. So the point I was trying to get, the point I was trying to get is that I'm telling you about the horrible thing that happened to the Italians. And I'm giving you the big picture too, but what about the African? It's much worse what happened. The whites are racist and what they did to the black, the Africans, but there's also what the Africans did to the Africans and what the white people did to their own white people, and the whole idea of slavery. And all of a sudden, the West realized that it was wrong because the Bible was a big thing. Most people, if you didn't read a book, you went to church every week, and something about this isn't right. And also we have the Constitution and the Bill of Rights and the Declaration of Independence. All those things basically say this, that we're all made equal and that we all have rights given to us not by man but by God. And the problem, Thomas Jefferson said, the problem is that before he got the 13th colonies to sign these documents to create a nation, he said, slavery, and this is in historical records, slavery has no place in America. This is not what this country is founded on. We give you 20 years to get rid of slavery, and the South didn't want to do it. He needed all 13 colonies to sign those documents. After those documents were signed, all of a sudden, everybody had rights. Nowhere in it, the idea that a slave, when they said a black person was only worth, or a slave was only worth 3/4, the reason for that was to take power away from the Confederacy. If a slave was counted as a full citizen, see, we live in a representative government, and it depends on how many people live in that particular state.
Just like today, when you have so many illegal immigrants in California, that actually gives them extra representatives.
Right. That's right. The more you, but you see, yeah. The North didn't want to give any more power to the South. They wanted to take away power from the South. And the only way they could do it is if the South is counting their slaves as citizens, yeah. That means they have more representation in the government. They have more representatives. And more representatives means that they have more power in Washington. And so they can overrule the North.
Yeah.
They can change the country to 100% Confederacy. The North wanted to make sure that they didn't have it's about representation in Washington. And that's what makes these states more powerful. And that's what's making California powerful, because even though the illegal immigrants are not, or migrants, undocumented migrants is the correct terminology that we're supposed to say, are not citizens. They're getting representation, which is, but they're doing it, of course, so the politicians end up having more power, and they're passing all these crazy laws: no gas, no fuel, no gas-powered engines, no natural gas, not building nuclear power plants, so nobody's going to have energy, and everybody's going to have rolling blackouts. So these politicians are insane. They're insane, and it's evil, and the people are suffering. So in the big picture, lest we forget, right now there are sex slaves all over the world. There are 40 million slaves, and 7 million that we knew before Libya fell.
Yeah.
Africans owning other Africans. This since the dawn of time. And I suggest there's The Roots of Slavery, or The History of Slavery by Thomas Sowell. There's a podcast number 3 talks about slavery. I tried to bring that up and it wouldn't come up, but other videos about Thomas Sowell talking about the history of slavery. Thomas Sowell, if you don't know, he's an intellectual and he's also African American. And he's done a thorough job documenting slavery all over the world. So this way we get the big picture that the idea of the democratic view is the majority rules, right? So, but if the majority wants slavery, you have slavery. If the majority says we're keeping Jim Crow laws, we're keeping Jim Crow laws. A republic gives voice to the minority to make sure that the minority is heard. And that's the difference. And you would see the reason why the Democrats want more power in numbers and want to remove the electoral system, which gives voice to the voiceless, the flyover country, they call it, and more power to the heavy populated coasts, which a lot of them are very, very wealthy and think completely different than the rest of the country. And that's what we're losing. And that's the danger. This is the dangers that we're facing. You see, in a democracy, the idea that the Jim Crow South, I'm talking about the KKK, who enacted Jim Crow laws, were exclusively, it was not all whites. Not just Italians were considered Black because they were in southern Italy, and so they're part Black because they used to be connected to Africa, and they're very dark-skinned. White, you had to be white Anglo-Saxon Protestant. The KKK looked up your family history. If you were Catholic, you could not belong to the KKK. If you were Jewish, you couldn't belong to the KKK. You had to be pure white Anglo-Saxon Protestant. Your roots were 100% Anglo-Saxon and you Protestant. You couldn't be anything else. It wasn't any white people, come on in, all white people. So we're putting the CRT that the racism is born is if you have white skin, you must be racist. It's
Yeah.
no, we actually all used to be dark skinned until we moved up and moved to the north and actually lost pigmentation, and the eye lost pigmentation, and full color is dark brown or basically almost black. And then what happened was changes, mutations happened, and the colors, basically blue is basically no color. You've got dark brown, which is full color, and there's a range of colors in between. So as it got lighter, you went to hazel brown, hazel green, green, which is not hazel. I've got green eyes. And then to blue, and sometimes you've got violet or steel blue, which is almost white, or it's very, very light blue. So we must realize there's, if evil is born within us, or racism, you don't obtain racism because your pigmentation is faded, because you moved to the north and your skin had to get lighter so it would absorb enough UV rays so your body could create vitamin D from the UV rays. The darker you were, if in the north, where you don't get much sunlight, you will get birth defects and all sorts of health problems. And as we've learned, that vitamin D helped with a certain thing that happened this past few years.
On the CDC website, but
enough vitamin D would help fight that and helps get over all sorts of, there's a whole host of even fibromyalgia, a whole host of diseases that we need vitamin D for. So the body adapted so it could create vitamin D. If you live near the equator, right under the sun, you have to be very dark, because you would be getting too much UV rays, because it's only a certain amount that you need to create vitamin D. You can't have too much and you can't have too little. So if you're dark skinned and you move up north, you could get, there could be birth defects in your children, and you may suffer from a lot of different health issues. And we do during the winter, because we really don't get the sunlight. That's why we have to take that massive amounts of vitamin D. So there's no way that could create evil. If anyone has evil, that's created, that's the person, that's the individual. You see, in a democracy, it's, you paint all these people. There's a Republican government. A republic represents the minority, the individual. When you have a democracy that says the majority says, this is what we want, and the idea of communities, all this community is racist. All this community is not racist, no matter what they do. Oh, and there's no individual responsibility. Everyone is different. Everyone has the capacity of good and bad. Not all good men are entirely good, and not all bad men are entirely bad. And to judge someone solely as if your family or your ancestors have never suffered, and because of the color of your skin, you must have oppressed someone. But if you go to every continent in this world, they've had slaves, and they've taken their own people as slaves, and they still have slaves. It was in the West that had slaves from Africa. The African slave trade lasted a few hundred years, and that was it. The rest of the world, we're talking from the beginning of time, and it's still going today. And if you don't like slavery and go to these countries, and of course you might not come out alive, and protest there. Try to eradicate slavery in the world. A lot of it is sex slavery, and a lot of slavery, like the Uyghur Muslims, which are building your solar panels and wind turbines, and children, Uyghur children, poor children in Africa are being used to build these solar panels and wind turbines. And no, the people who, the political party who was the party of the KKK, and the KKK didn't really, it was Robert Byrd died in 2010, and Obama and Biden put up his statue in the Capitol Rotunda in 2011, and he was the conscience of our Senate. He was the conscience of our Senate, and he was the grand exalted Cyclops of the West Virginia KKK. And no, he never changed. He never apologized, and he used the N-word on TV. In fact, that connects to another point I was making that was very important. The WASP thing, the very exclusive kind of white person, the religion. It's not just your national your ethnicity, but your religion. He called, you know, that there are white blanks. I won't even say anything about that word, but you know what word I'm saying. Because there are whites that are not considered whites, especially very poor whites, who people look at the Appalachians, oh, they're all white, they must all be racist, especially those poor whites, especially the ones in the trail. You know, those are the ones who don't belong to these exclusive groups, that are not considered the KKK white, that exclusive white. That's why he called them white blanks on TV, because he's trying to tell you, oh yeah, there are white ones too, because they're not pure. And if you look at Robert Byrd, boy, he's like evil white. He's evil white, and they use, it's called the Byrd bath, how they clean a bill, and to get a bill through, they attach it. He figured something out. You make it a tax.
A rider, yeah.
And it passes right through. They're still using, he was called the conscience of the Senate, and he was the West Virginia Grand Exalted Cyclops, and he inducted people into the KKK. This is the if you say that the system is racist, that's it. And they have the statue of him in the Capitol Rotunda. And that was 2010. And that's the Democrat Party. I'm sorry, but that's the Democrat Party. And there are Republicans like Ryan, the guy's a Democrat. He hates Republicans. Mitch McConnell.
Yeah.
Mitch McConnell really is a Democrat. And so there are Republicans that are definitely on that side. And that's how they get voted in, because they call themselves a Republican, but they're really Democrat. So there's the system is racist. It's in front of your, but then again, our first Black president put that statue up and eulogized him. Biden eulogized him. Clinton eulogized him. But anyway, let's get back to Columbus Day.
Yes.
And the reason why I go around this, because they'll say, well, it isn't the Italians suffered. We know what this country did to the black people, what we're doing to the Mexicans, or we're the Native Americans, and this and that. Yes, and all these groups had slaves and made slaves out of their own people, or they would go to war. They just go to war to get slaves to sacrifice. A lot of the South Americans did that. And it also happened up here too. So it's man in humanity to man. And that's why it's not, I would never look at all the Native Americans and say, all of you did this. You're all responsible. No, that's wrong. Everybody's an individual. I'm sure there were peaceful tribes who couldn't be peaceful because other tribes made war on them, took the braves back, and that's what the Pilgrims did. They helped. Was it the Massachusetts tribe was taking the Wampanoags? They take the brave back home with them, and they would skin them alive, and they told the Pilgrims, we need help, and they handed them guns. Solve the problem. You see, so they helped each other. So this happens, and people who want to be peaceful can't be, because people are making war on you, trying to take you as sacrificial victims, and making slaves out of you all over the world. But this is the reason why Italians were singled out. What happened was there was 11, they rounded up Italian Americans and Italian immigrants. And in New Orleans, because somebody killed the chief of police. And they rounded them up and they killed them. And they pulled their bodies apart and they hung them all, the body pieces all over they decorated New Orleans with the body parts of these Italians, Southern Italians, which they hated. And yes, the chief of police was Irish, and Rob will have to apologize for that because he's half Irish. And then the people took these body parts home as souvenirs. And it wasn't until 2019 that the city of New Orleans apologized to the Italians who died. It was about 1890, about the turn of the century. Long time ago, everybody's dead. Everybody's gone to apologize to. And now they have a mayor who there are young teenagers that are of minority teenagers. I don't have to say that because there's a reason why I'm saying that, that are carjacking. And they're killing people by literally pulling them out of the car, beating them up, and ripping their bodies apart. There's something about New Orleans and ripping body pieces off. There's this elderly grandmother that they pulled out of her car, and they threw her down a road. There was like a hill, and they ripped her arm off, and it took her like a couple days to bleed to death. And the mayor, you see, why the crime is going through the roof there, is because the mayor went to the court and told the judge, oh, they're a part of this juvenile program, so don't put them in jail. Yeah, they're a part of my program. And the program isn't really anything. It's just set up to look like a program to help the juveniles, but it's to keep minority kids out of prison. So that's not going to stop. That's not going to stop. But that interesting how that happened in the same city that did this to the Italians. So America, because that happened, America gave Italians a day. You know how we have Black History Month, Indigenous Americans have a month. They gave Italians Columbus Day, which isn't really a holiday. It was a day that the Italians could have a parade. Nobody really gets the day off, and there's a lot of sales. Columbus Day sale, mattress sales, they sell cars. They did that because of the Italians, Southern Italians who suffered and died in these horrible jobs that were the risk of you dying in these horrible jobs that nobody wanted to do was extremely high, like building a building, and the Italians had to work in the basement and the building would fall in on them. And like the kind of job my grandfather had by carrying bricks on his back. From the bricks, walking them over to where they were building the building. And he wanted to go back to Italy, but my grandmother came to America because the Italian women said, you better go get your husband. You'll never see him again. So she took my Uncle Angelo. She never traveled from one city to the next. She got on that boat. And when she got here, she said, I'm not moving. I'm never going to another. That's it. I'm staying here. She didn't want to take another trip again. My grandfather really just wanted to make some money and go back to Italy, which might have been, I don't know, might have been the smarter thing. But they did break down in tears when Mussolini, when the king that destroyed southern Italy and unified the country, but destroyed southern Italy, put them in that position, handed Italy over to Mussolini, the fascists, and my family cried. It tore them apart that Italy was given away like that, and also nobody says. They keep saying, no, we have the list of Japanese people, the names. Which FDR? They never, Democrats, when they say, we had internment camps for the Japanese, they never say it's their beloved FDR who put the first open member of the KKK on the Supreme Court, Hugo Black. So there's some what do you call it? Racism in the system there, but that's FDR, and he was a racist, and he was a fascist. That's why he let the Depression go on so long. When you make people suffer so long, they accept whatever you give them. He wanted people to be disillusioned with capitalism, which is happening now. They're breaking us. I'm not going to be able to heat this out during the winter. We have wicked winters here. England, as much as that king complains about the climate, they don't even get snow over there. It's mild. It's like fall. They don't even know climate change, warming. Come over here, Kingy. Come over here. Why don't you stay in my house with no heat because of your climate change, and you don't even have one turbine or solar panel, which is destroying the planet, by the way. But that's another video. You don't even know what cold is. You don't even know, and you're going to kill off the majority of people, and that's what you want because there's too many poor people. See, it's, and you have, the hippies would never have allowed this. Or the 60s. Remember the man and the people with the money that are running the world and get rid of the monarchy? Good idea. Are the ones, now they wouldn't have bought into this if they didn't sell it as you're destroying the planet. You're destroying the planet. So if you were a hippie, or if you're going to want to be hippie, that liberal mentality, you have to sell it that the earth is going to get destroyed because the plants can't take the carbon. The plants need oxygen to breathe, and the carbon is suffocating them. I'm sure everybody out there knows exactly what I'm saying when I say that, and knows there might be some, she's stupid. I mean, do you get it? The problem is too much carbon. There's too much of us breathing. There's too many of us breathing. That's the problem. I'm like, wake up. That's it right there. And with nothing to replace fossil fuel, and we can't afford it, a lot of us are going to die. And guess what? A lot of elderly people are going to die. And if they claim the COVID's going to come back, well, then we're going to, in England, they're telling them don't visit any elderly people. Stay away, isolate them, stay away from them. What's going to happen to the elderly who don't get help and can't afford fuel? What's going to happen? I predicted this before they even said it, that this is what they're doing. I mean, or maybe they're not. I take that back. They're wonderful. They care about, no. They're putting their heads together constantly about climate change, but nobody, no wealthy person is saying, you know what? The poor people, the elderly people, they need heat this winter. More people die in the winter.
Yeah.
Nobody's trying to fix that problem, or we need to feed the people. Oh yeah, the bugs. And out of England, we have to drink our urine because of wasting water, which I have the answer to that. By the way, I'll be making a video about that. People have known about this for years, and if everybody did it, there would be no water wasted. But as you see, what they're doing is like calling all white people, except if you're a Democrat. If you're a Democrat, that absolves you from being the white racist that you were born with the evil. It doesn't make any sense. They're
well, yeah, a white Democrat can lecture a black conservative,
and a black Republican is not black.
Yeah.
You know, a black, if you're lesbian, you're Republican, you're black, and you're Muslim, you're not any of those things if you're a Republican.
Yeah. Joe Biden will take away your black card. Yeah.
But what they're doing is so the communities we don't help each other. Like I said, my grandparents had the door open. They grew their own food. They were allowed to. Nobody was GMOing the food. There was no big billionaire buying all the farmland. They were using the little land that they had, and they fed the people, and they made wine and pasta, and really healthy food with the vegetables and the extra virgin olive oil. And they made it. If you've got all these communities and all these people, let's say, and I'll know, you know, the Italians are white now. The Italians are white, and Christopher Columbus, they came over here, and the Native Americans who weren't sacrificing each other, which he landed in the Indies where the Aztecs were. They killed 5,000 to 6,000 their own people a day and cannibalized them after they cut their hearts out or skinned them alive. And they would go to war to get more people to sacrifice. I don't know. Basically, they threw Columbus in jail because he couldn't pay back the money for the 3 ships, because he was supposed to find a route to the Indies to get the spices, because meat decayed quickly and you needed the spices to cover that flavor. That's the reason why. And also there was silks. There's all sorts of things. the wealthy, the royalty wanted, and the wealthy. So he couldn't pay for the ships because he didn't end up where he was supposed to end up. And he did adopt a Native American and took care of them. So the real story about Columbus and what he may have actually done, what happened was the Portuguese came over, and a lot of the Spanish saw what was going on. And of course, the missionaries came and tried to convert them because God doesn't want you to kill all these people en masse like that and cannibalize them. But they did mistreat. They mistreated it was the missionaries that reported back to the Pope and told the Pope that that they were mistreating the indigenous people, and because they wanted the gold, they wanted to get their gold and having their way with the women, of course. That's what men do. Well, the Pope told them that these are children of God, and you must treat them as children of God. You must not mistreat them. And believe it or not, the Pope helped. And as much as popes can be bad, the Pope did the right thing. And it was actually the Christian missionaries that, as bad as you hear Christians do bad things, but they don't do it in the name of Christ. They don't do it. That wasn't taught by Christ. They're doing that on their own. But the Pope did help with that. So what's happening is where you've taken a day. Basically, it was an Italian Pride Day. You took it away, and now it's Indigenous American Day. And are you celebrating all the Indigenous Americans, even the ones that enslaved and sacrificed their own people en masse? Are we celebrating them too? Or should we change the name of that day to, we're celebrating the peaceful Indigenous people. We're celebrating the memory of the victims of the other Indigenous people. It's very complicated. But Columbus also, they gave the Italians Columbus, and for some reason they told the Italians that Columbus was an Italian. Mm-hmm. Columbus was not Italian at all. Columbus's mother was Jewish, nothing wrong with being Jewish, and his father was Portuguese royalty. In fact, you'll even find the true history of Columbus in a video right here on YouTube. And he died in prison. He adopted a Native American child, raised them, and when he went back, he was thrown in prison because he couldn't pay back the ships because he never really reached India. And India also had a lot of gold, really. The cost of gold in India up to maybe 10, 15 years ago was very, very cheap. Still was very cheap. But so they gave the Italians Columbus Day because of the largest mass lynching in American history. And they didn't just lynch them. They didn't just hang them. They desecrated them. And what they did was sick. It's absolutely sick. I mean, pulling their bodies apart, and they were all exonerated. The judge found them all innocent. They had nothing to do with the killing. This was just taking innocent people that they hated, lynching them, and pulling their bodies apart and hanging the pieces all over the city. And then the people took them home as souvenirs. Those people, I hate to tell you, are racist. They're evil and they're haters. That's really bad. So to tell so to tell Southern Italians, except for what they have done individually, a person has chosen to do themselves, not their ancestors, not their skin color. But most Italians are very dark skinned, as my family was, except for me. That they're actually white and they're privileged when they came over here because their whole country was destroyed. It was stolen from them. A genocide happened. I mean, they went to war with them, not only massacred them, but took them up to the north where it was winter and put them in jail with nothing on. So they froze to death. It was a genocide. And to tell anybody of a Southern Italian descent that we're privileged and Columbus did this to the Portuguese and the Spanish came over here and they did a lot of things. But also, we have to be honest and know the history of from Mexico down, what they did to their own people. Yeah. On a level that is uncalculable. Yeah. No, it's and cannibalized them, flayed them alive, cut their hearts out while they were alive, and then the priest took a bite out of it, and then threw the body down the pyramid, and the people ate it. And they flayed this. Native Americans in the North did this too. They would go to war and sacrifice thousands of Native Americans. And they know this because they found their remains. And they know that they tortured them for weeks before they killed them because they could see the torture marks on their bones and that they started to heal. That means the torture went over weeks before they killed them. I'm not saying that the Spanish, who probably bought syphilis over here, but when people move around and they migrate around the world, they bring things like what's back now? Polio is back. All sorts of diseases are back.
The tap water in New York, yeah,
in this country. It's in the tap water in New York now. We eradicated all those things and now it's back. Should we do the same thing to the people who brought those diseases back as we've totally demonized? They say the white people, the white Europeans, it was actually the Spanish and the Portuguese. Which it's kind of like are considered Hispanic and are not considered white now.
If you think about the social justice stuff,
it wasn't the English and the Germans.
It starts falling apart. So the actions, of course, is what exactly his actions are. That's subject to pseudo history of its own. But the actions of Christopher Columbus are somehow put on the ledger of the evils of white people. But wait, Christopher Columbus was the same color as the people who are at the southern border, and we're told don't let the people of that complexion it's because white people are being racist again, even though they're the same color of the person who came into the continent and supposedly did all these horrible things. So
and he was thrown in jail. When he went back to Spain, he was thrown in jail. Because he owed money, and he died a horrible death. Yeah. He spent many years in jail and died of some diseases, some really, really horrible death.
The Schrodinger's minority status. It's like, Asians are oppressed or they're the oppressors, depending on how the Democrats are feeling that way. And Jews, ethnic Jews, go from being white to being not white.
Yeah. And his mother was Jewish. She was, he had he was out of wedlock, so he had the father, who was Portuguese royalty, had an affair.
All right,
He wasn't Italian. He wasn't even Italian at all. But the man did suffer for the rest of his life. Even though Neil deGrasse Tyson said that as much as you may hate him, but it was basically the people who came after him, the Portuguese, then the Spanish, but then again, what was going on in this country, and even those people migrated over here too. I mean, from the indigenous people or the Aborigines from Australia, which went from Africa down to South Asia, which is India, and they lived there for hundreds of thousands of years before they actually went to Australia to become indigenous people of Australia. That's kind of it. And of course, and then Polynesian people came over, the boats, and they kind of settled mostly was Easter Island, their Polynesian descent, Hawaii, and then down to South America. And then the Asians came through over the Bering Straits. So for the idea that man is not going to, it's like the people, you people in Europe, stay where you are. But the people in Europe, they say, basically really all came out of the Middle East. You know, it's kind of like they went from Africa, Middle East, and into Europe, and up through everybody kind of like, so who's the evil one? Who's actually the white one? If we all came out of Africa and then went to the Middle East, then came into Europe, who's the white one? Who's the bad one? Who isn't supposed to move? Was it okay for the Africans to move up into Europe and to move into the Middle East? Whether it was okay for the Middle Easterners to move into Europe? No. These people who've turned white because they lived too far away from the sun and they needed the UV rays, so their skin got lighter so they could produce vitamin D. He says this has nothing to do with evil or racism. It's actually so anti-intellectual and so unscientific, saying that evil is the color is in you because of the color of your skin. We have gone backwards.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like right now I can't. There's a lot of things we used to think of that people didn't know, and they saw that there was demons doing the sickness. You got sick because you got a demon, and you got to exorcise the spirits, and it was epilepsy or it was something else. You know what I mean? This is like really backwards thinking.
Yeah, well, if you didn't force me to change my name right here, this would say Deflating Atheism. So, and that goes back to a point I would frequently make on my channel, which is we spent 10 years trying to beat into submission the doctrine that preached that there is neither Jew nor Gentile, man nor woman, slave nor free, you are all one in Jesus Christ. So we spent 10 years saying, oh, well, that's an evil superstition. So we battered that into submission. And what happens? We get tribalism again. We basically get neo-paganism. We basically get, these sort of blood and soil groups. We got it with the alt-right in the beginning. That was sort of a flash in the pan. But then we get left identitarianism too. And we see the tribal lines being drawn up again, exactly as you would expect if you try to erase Christianity. So I see a definite cause and effect as far as that goes.
Yeah. And as you're talking, as I was thinking, what's the reason why they're doing this? The reason why they're doing this is to break us up. Mm-hmm. And when I started this channel, I made a video when I used to make 5-minute videos. They are trying to get us to have civil war in the streets. Mm-hmm. They want us to fight with each other because we're not depopulating fast enough, so they have to take the energy. So we freeze to death this winter. It's like,
well, yeah,
all these billionaires, they're putting their minds together and they're running the world, but they're not trying to save. This is a crisis. This is a crisis. There's a genocide that is going to happen this winter.
Mm-hmm.
And all these billionaires, the smartest and the most powerful, the most educated, the brilliance, bugs, buy up all the farmland, make them eat bugs. There isn't enough water, urine, we should be that's what they're saying. We're not worth it, and take the fuel away because the plants can't handle and the trees can't handle the carbon. They can't breathe carbon.
Yeah.
What are they saying? They're not putting their heads together to try to make sure this is a crisis. COVID was a crisis. This is a crisis. We're not going to be warm this winter. No. People are going to freeze. If we get COVID and we're cold, we're freezing to death because we can't afford fuel. Nobody cares. They're not putting their heads together. We've got to save the planet. We've got to save the planet from the people. We got to figure how to get these breathers gone. Keep those masks on. We don't want to even see you breathing. We don't want to see your face. And they're getting us to hate each other or where's the psychologist saying everybody, it's the person inside. Remember, it used to be accept who you were. God got the way God made you. You can't say somebody's bad because of the color of their skin or their ethnicity or their religion. Where are the psychologists? Where are the hippies? Remember the hippies used to talk about all this shit? And all the people who used to write the books of self-help, even Oprah was into this at one point. They hate us. They're not trying to save. Where is the person that's one of those billionaires with the money? I'm talking to you, Elon Musk, who's going to get in front of the WEF, in front of German guy, the German supervillain, and say, what are you doing? The people are going to freeze to death. COVID is coming. If COVID is coming back and these people freeze to death and you're lowering the amount of food that's grown, and the farmlands and the fertilizer, and farmers are selling their farms because they can't afford the fertilizer. And people don't want to work anymore after COVID.
Yeah.
After COVID, they don't want to work anymore. People, you can't even get an appointment with a psychologist or psychiatrist because everybody wants to get evaluated for something psychological because they don't want to work anymore. And the people who actually need to get help can't. I mean, who've suffered their lives with something can't get in to see anybody. It's like totally boycott Prince Charles's coronation. Totally boycott it. Really? You're the king? You're supposed to represent God? You're supposed to represent God on earth. Defend what faith? And we're going to crown you, put all these jewels on you, and the scepter, the largest diamonds the world has ever known, the Kohinoor diamond, the Star of Africa. And you're not even trying. You and your son, who went to Africa and said the world is overpopulated, so we're going to start with Africa. You're going to start with Africa, which means there's too many people in the world, and you're going to start with Africa, which means all you out there, you shouldn't be alive. Once you say There's too many people in the world, and we have to start lowering the population. You're saying all these people who are alive, all you people, you shouldn't exist. He's going to be the King of England too? And his son is afraid. They said, oh, Prince George goes to bed crying, afraid of the environment. What about the people? What about the dying people? What about Meghan and Harry? Oh, you're the new Diana? They've destroyed Diana. They had to pay millions to revamp Camilla because they cheated on Diana. They said, well, Diana's had all these psychological problems, and Prince Charles suffered, and both Camilla, they were in love, and they suffered because Diana was 19 years old, and nobody advised her, and they should have told her, look, we need a virgin because this is tradition, and it's whatever. Camilla's related to, they're both related because they're both great-grandchildren of, she's the great-grandchild of King Henry VII's mistress, and so they're both related to King Henry VII. Couldn't you have told her, look, he wants to have sex with her. He is going to be one of those princes and kings that's going to have mistresses and don't sleep around. And are you okay with this? You're 19. Because her mother just took off and she was alone. And even her sister had an eating disorder too. It was a pretty bad home life. She was looking for a husband, and he knew it. She said it out loud. She said it on TV before she got married. She wanted stability, a husband that wasn't going to leave her, a husband that loved her. And she really thought he loved her. She goes, oh, I'll be all right. I've got Charles, and he'll make sure everything's all right. You know what? Tell her that isn't the way it's going to be. You play princess, and then you play queen. And he's going to go cheat because he's going backwards, instead of going forwards and doing things. He said, oh, all the other kings and princes throughout time have had mistresses. Why can't I? Well, there you go. And you go. So Camilla's the normal one. Camilla is just wonderful, and she dresses great. They paid millions to a PR firm to revamp her image. Now, everybody has forgotten what Diana went through, and how cruel he was to her and cold, and left her when she was pregnant and she was going through the whole hormone thing. That's why they say she flung herself down the stairs. Because he was just cruel and cold. And now they're writing books and they're putting it out there. Oh, Diana was crazy. She was psychotic. And so of course he had to get away from her. To make Camilla better and him better. When he was a spoiled brat, and they've got him on film, he lost his polo match, so he got off his horse and he beat his horse. He beat his horse on camera, and he throws fits. And Camilla, I even got it in the book. It says, Camilla's so great. When he throws fits, she knows how to calm him down. Who has the psychological issues? Excuse me? And this is the guy who did the first commercial for the WEF. You will own nothing and be happy. We're going to take everything from you because we have everything. It's like not just gold, not just jewels, not just castles, not just palaces, not just the best real estate in the world. We've got Da Vinci's notebooks, and so does Gates, and we've got paintings from the greatest artists that ever were. Sculpture. I mean, it's unending. I mean, Do you ever see what those places look like? And the jewelry collection and this and the basement that's a big refrigerator for tons and thousands of tons, and I'm not even exaggerating, of furs that nobody will ever use. And we own nothing. We are going to own nothing and we'll be happy. And the climate is the thing.
Yeah.
The climate is the thing. And where are you hippies? You hippies, the people with the money, the poor people in Vietnam that are getting killed. You cared about the people.
They're all frauds. They're all frauds.
They're all. Oh,
I saw. You see the Jan Wenner or whatever his name, the founder of Rolling Stone, on Joe Rogan, who was saying, yeah, of course the government should own the internet. And he said, well, what? The government that lies to? Oh no, those are politicians.
Oh, and we're censored. We're censored to death. We're afraid to say. It's like, we're afraid to say any. We're afraid to say the truth. We're not allowed to say the truth because they own anything. This is not. It's gone. It's gone. My channel might be gone after this stream right here, trying to get the truth out about what the frick. What the frick? I mean, these poor Italians suffered. Couldn't you give them a day? Somebody suggested Chef Boyardee. Oh yeah, he invented a way of like take out Italian food. He gave you the dry pasta, a can of sauce, and a block of cheese. And that way, it's like the first like takeout. People can buy that and kind of cook it themselves. Well, the Chef Boyardee in a can now is pretty bad. I think there might be a different Italian, but give us a day. What about name it after the people that were sacrificed in New Orleans or something? Why did you take this day away? It wasn't even a day that people had off.
They took Aunt Jemima away. She was the first black millionaire in America, and they took her off her own product.
Was C.J. Walker? She made hair care for black women, and she was the first black for 1900. She did it. Believe it or not, in the world, it was a black woman in the world. But Uncle Ben's rice. Their family used to get residuals from that company. Uncle Ben was not a slave. He was known. He had a farm, and he was known to grow the best rice. He had a secret to growing the best rice. His picture should be on the package. His name should be on the package. It's on. Shouldn't we be honoring these people who did great things? Mm-hmm. See, everything is upside down. Oh, and by the way, let me show you something. I'll be back in 2 seconds. You're going to love this. This might be worth a lot of money, people. A lot of money.
That's the Tarantella. Oh, and here I try to decorate Italian. I have Luciano Berio albums of Luciano Berio music, so that's my Italian decor.
I have 2 pictures. This is going to be worth a lot of money. You know, they're taking the pictures off of everything of diverse people. I have a picture. This last picture that's been removed of Senator Elizabeth Warren before she was senator, when she was just running around free in Oklahoma in the trees.
Yeah.
I kept 2 of them. This is going to be worth a lot of money. So look at her. Look, and that's back when she had black hair.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Doesn't it? I was taking a shower the other night. I'm going to blow. Wait. These billionaires, the wealthiest people in the world, know that people can't afford fuel and there's going to be rolling blackouts and nobody's building nuclear power plants. They're just telling us to use electric. We have to use electric, but there isn't enough electric stations to even provide it. But also you can't power trucks. You cannot power planes. They're going to fall out of the sky. They can't go up these hills, and they can only go so far, and it takes a long time to power them.
Yeah,
and these
all electric vehicles are hilariously inadequate. They tried to do a heavy duty pickup truck, a GM heavy duty pickup truck. It stalled on the highway as the guys were driving it back. Yeah.
Right. And all these billionaires aren't really using them. You know, they're flying in their private jets. They're with the climate summits that they all fly to. They fly to in their private jets, and then they get there by limousine. And then they get like lobsters and Kobe beef, all this stuff, because they love the environment. And we're going to eat bugs flown from all over the world. And they just get together and gorge themselves. It's like they can't wait for this winter to pass, because can you imagine if you could get rid all of the sick people and the disabled people and the elderly people? Wait a minute. That's what Stalin did. That's what Stalin did and Mao. They did the exact same thing. They did it several ways. One way is gangs like Antifa, in the streets, beating people up, torturing people, and people ended up committing suicides. And they would beat up and torture the elderly people because they had wisdom and they remembered history. You know, I'm talking about history that people are forgetting, history about Diana that people are forgetting. So to make them look good, you have to make Diana a mental case. And wait a minute, Harry and Meghan are she's the new Diana, and they want to keep their mother's memory going. They don't talk about Diana. They're not fighting for Diana's reputation. It's all her. It's all Meghan, Harry. What he suffered. Wait a minute. What about racism? Wait a minute. You want to... It came out that Prince Andrew and Fergie thought they were going to be king and queen because of Prince Charles sleeping around. That there's no way he was going to become king. So they thought they're going to become king and queen. So these two think that they're going to become king and queen. But wait a second. You have your golden ticket, but you keep talking about racism against you, which people in school thought you were Italian. And she's lighter than my family. So I don't know. But she does get good tans. You had the golden ticket. Golden Boy went to Africa and said that the world is overpopulated. The world is overpopulated, and we need to lower the population of the world. And we're going to start with Africa. So all you people where they say, oh, the disease is propagated in Africa, they usually stay there, but now they're breaking out around the world. It's these poor people, and it kind of infests. That's why it infested at that wet market. That's exactly how that was made. The poor people. It's the way the poor people live, and they're not. That's the most racist thing I've ever heard. I was like, one of the most racist things I've ever. That's incredibly racist that they got away with, and it's probably the truth, right, Rob? But even Meghan is so stupid. First of all, you've already ruined your reputation. What you should have done was beat the drum about Diana. Why are you destroying Diana? Why are you destroying Diana's reputation? Look at what she did. She did a lot of good. Oh, she called well, yes, sometimes she wanted the photographers to come because she wanted to bring light to a situation that needed to be fixed. Like nobody wanted to touch AIDS patients, and you can touch them, you can kiss them, you can hug them, and not get AIDS. And she made that not have. There was reasons. She wasn't insane. Why don't you're letting her reputation get destroyed, yet at the same time, your wife is the new Diana, but they've destroyed the reputation of Diana, and they've made her a mental case. So does that mean your wife is a mental case? I mean, do you see how this doesn't make any sense? Oh, but it's all about Harry and how much he suffers. But wait a second. You're talking about racism? Did you hear what your brother said? What your brother-in-law said in Africa? I mean, or the fact you could say people are going to freeze to death and elderly in the world. There's nothing, you haven't replaced it. But you know what? You see, because they're on the same bandwagon.
Yeah.
And to belong, they want to belong to the WEF. They're Democrats. So you have to buy into climate change. You have to buy into what the WEF is selling, because you can't go against them. They will eat them. They will drop 2 drops of acid on them and they'll disappear. They can't go against them. This is the political bandwagon. That's the star they hooked their ship to.
Yeah.
And so they can't go against even what William said in Africa, even though the hypocrisy is blowing my mind.
Well, we're coming up on 2.5 hours.
I know. So this is why we had Columbus Day. And this is the evil, the lie that took people who suffered in their own country, suffered a genocide, came to this country, and those same people who put them through the genocide said, oh, they're Black, and subjugated them to Jim Crow laws, but at the same time, they suffered in many in the jobs, and of course the lynching. And that wasn't the only lynching, by the way. Wasn't just these. That wasn't the only lynching that Italians endured. They endured lynchings all over the South. And in fact, where I live in the North, Sacco and Vanzetti were tried. They were accused because they were Italian. They pinned something on them that they didn't do and hung them. So
was it the thrill kill case?
I don't remember. But if you look up Sacco and Vanzetti, and so you've rewritten history, and see how quickly history is rewritten, and then people don't even remember. It's not white people. They did not accept all white people. My mother looked at me and said, "There's no way the KKK, they would totally reject you. You would not be considered white in the South."
Yeah.
And there's several reasons why they wouldn't, but you would not be accepted simply because you're a Catholic. You wouldn't be accepted. White, Anglo-Saxon, and this used to be said a lot. I heard on TV people would say this, and then boom, when was it Goebbels or Herm? They said if you say a lie loud enough and often enough, people will believe you. Well, that changed from white Anglo-Saxon Protestant to any white that's not a Democrat.
Yeah.
To any white that's not a Democrat. How about that? Wow. Are all born evil. Wow. And Black people who are minorities, who are Republican, who are not Democrat.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. white Democrat will have no hesitation in white-splaining to a black conservative why they
exactly
why
why
they will
they
find body and soul to the Democrat Party.
yeah. It was the guy who started BET. His name was Robert Johnson. He met with Trump.
Yeah.
And they fixed a problem. Well, because he wanted to know the issues that needed to be fixed in the community, and he wanted to fix them. And he actually did. He said, is Trump a racist? No, he's not a racist at all. No. Anybody, these people who've met with him know that he's not a racist.
Yeah.
That apparently in Black and minority communities, it's a very prevalent that they have a higher instance of losing jobs for one reason or another. I suppose if you are poor, I'm sure it depends education, but you change jobs a lot. And every time you change jobs, when in each job, if you put money into their retirement plan, that's supposed to stay there until you retire. But what happens is every time they change jobs, they take the money out and they give it back to them. And then it's spent, it's gone, they don't have it. So Trump devised a way that even if you change jobs, that money stays in there and the interest accumulates. And it's so far, it's like $1 billion has been saved for my Black and other minorities that this happens to. And that's because of Trump. And I heard Robert Johnson, talking about this, and he's a self-made millionaire. It's like these people who are really helping the poor people and the minorities. We must get rid of them. We must destroy them. Oh, everybody loved Trump. Oh, now he's a racist because he ran as a Republican against a Democrat.
That's why I say, I mean, you go to the rap lyrics in the 90s, all the rappers were using Donald Trump as an icon, saying, as an icon of wealth. It all changed on the dime in 2015.
But everybody also forgot that they said, the birther movement. The birther movement thing. Remember the birther movement? They blamed on him. That was actually Sidney Blumenthal, who worked for Hillary Clinton when Hillary was running in 2008. He found a picture of him dressed in Muslim African garb. And he also found that when he was editor of the Harvard Law Review, which he got without writing anything. So usually you have to write something to get that job. His bio said that he was born in Kenya. And Sidney Blumenthal found this. And for his first book, Dreams of My Father, the press release said the author was born, Senator Obama was born in Kenya. So, and Michelle Obama spoke in front of a class, and she said, when we went to Kenya to visit my husband's birthplace. So that's 3 times. And then she's the one who got the photograph from Sidney Blumenthal, who worked for her. And he found this other stuff, and she wanted to put out the fact that this guy really is an American. I want to be the American president. This guy, you could see he's dressed like this. He's not American. And you know what? Look, he wasn't born an American. That was from Hillary. That was found by Sidney Blumenthal and put out by Hillary. Yet Trump got blamed for the birther movement, the whole birth certificate issue. He got this in. The reason why, because Obama was doing a lot of things that were not good for the country. Everybody was so excited to have an African-American president. Everybody wanted to see the little bit of racism that we had left was going to be stomped out. People were so happy about that. But then he started to, because Ayers, Bill Ayers from the Weather Underground, him and Bernardine Dorr and his wife blew up government buildings in the 60s. And he said in the 60s that you have to change this country over to communist, you have to kill 30 million people. But that's when we had 200 million people, so you'd have to kill more now. But you know what? This winter, that dream might come true. So this is his friend, and they all ascribe to Saul Alinsky, Rules for Radicals. This is scary. And when someone asked Obama about Bill Ayers, he's a respected professor. He's a professor in a college. You can't say that about him. He blew up government buildings. Of course, and some of the hippies that were building the bombs got blown up too. But the whole point was to change this country over. And Trump saw this happening. We were seeing these things happening. We need a civilian security force that's just as strong and just as well funded as the U.S. military. But wait a second, we have the police. Is he trying to replace the police force? Well, in the year of 2020, it sounds like that was about to happen. In fact, we were going to get rid of the entire police force. I'm not sure what they were going to replace them with, but Hitler had the brown shirts. Mussolini had the black shirts.
Yeah.
Mao had the Red Guard. Stalin had the Red Army, and Pol Pot had the Khmer Rouge. So that is a civilian that's a civilian force that's going to keep somebody's law, isn't it? And then we saw groups in this country that won't be named that would terrorize people, just like these other groups did, that were young. They were all young. They got the young people to do it. And then they killed them all, Yeah. All these different countries, they killed them all, either by firing squad or freezing to death in the country under hard labor. But they killed them all. And, with Hitler, was the Night of the Long Knives, is what killed off the brown shirts. You see, these are bits of history, but also there's that history within 10 years' time, 10, 15 years' time, and even about the environment. I mean, just things that they just keep repeating the narrative, keep repeating the lie, and people forget the history that they've lived through, and what the KKK really, and the fact that the conscience of your Senate is the Grand Exalted Cyclops of the West Virginia KKK, and his bronze statue, life-size, is under the Capitol Rotunda, which must be protected. That statue must never come down. And you got your first black president, the Joe Biden, the Clinton, eulogizing him, and them still using his ways of getting a bill through. But he was a genius. He could get any bill through he wanted through. That's what you want. You want the Grand Exalted Cyclops of the West Virginia KKK to get through any bill he wants to get through, and the Democrats who were supporting him. So we see how when we change history, we forgot why the Italians suffered. We forgot what happened. In fact, most people probably didn't know what happened to them in southern Italy, right? And you demonize Columbus, who, worse for the wear, if you know what happened at that time, you're going to have a better perspective of everything that was going on. But he wasn't even Italian. And then you take that day away which wasn't even a holiday. It was just Columbus Day. People had sales. The Italians had parades, the Knights of Columbus. Italians had pride. There was a dignified organization, Knights of Columbus. And, you know, they helped mentally challenged people, disabled people. They cook food they really make sure the poor, the disabled, the sick are taken care of and fed. And you've destroyed these people. And they're actually helping the poor that you've decided this winter to freeze to death. How about that? That's why you want to get rid of the Knights of Columbus. That's why you want to get rid of that. But you see how quickly we forget, yet most people don't even know the history of what happened to the Italians. Such as the Italians. The Italians suffered when they were taking the slaves, taking them as slaves, going into Europe and taking them all as slaves. Especially, it was much easier to get the people in the Mediterranean. And also the Italians suffered from the year 800 to 1300. The Saracen Knights from Egypt, one side of my family terrorized the other from the year 800 to 1300. And then my mother got back at them. They came anytime they wanted to. You know how we hear about the Golden Age and there was the Andalusian paradise? Well, things not necessarily will work that way. From the year 800 to 1300, anytime they wanted to rape, rob, and pillage, let's go get gold or artwork or whatever they wanted. They would come in to the Italian peninsula from Egypt, wipe through the whole thing, rape, rob, and pillage. And there was an entire city of over 800 people, men, women, and children, who were beheaded because they wouldn't convert. And it was Pope Ratzinger, which was Pope Benedict, made them all saints. And you can go and see their headless skeletons down in a crypt if you want to. But if that also happened to Italy. That also happened to Italy. That's bad too. You know, not just what the Barbary took them as slaves and cut off their balls and used the women as sex slaves and then killed the babies. Not just that. All these things were happening. Oh, you froze. Okay. Oh, you're here. You froze for a second. But that's a heck of a lot. I mean, the Italians did go through a lot, but you know what? Let's forget what happened in Italy. Let's just look what happened in America. Why take that day away? Why take the day away? Why take any holiday away? Make it a holiday and make everybody have the day off. That's great. You get paid. You get the day off. Kids get the day off at school. Oh, Columbus, you can't honor, but let's look at the true history of Columbus. Why did you make it Columbus Day? The guy was half Portuguese royalty, and his mother was Jewish. So he was a bastard child, but the Portuguese were masters of the sea. I mean, they really knew how to, like, as far as like the compass, they were really good at navigating the sea. But why did you give them Columbus Day, and Columbus wasn't even Italian? I'm sure there's a lot of Italian Americans. I think the one who invented the TV, I'm pretty sure was an Italian. Maybe not. Or was it Marconi invented the radio? I mean, it's like, I'm sure there's a lot of, find a Southern Italian that came here that was poor, that did something good. I mean, you know, and you can find a lot of them. Of course, they're all, except for like one or two, all Democrats. Sure. Why don't you honor one of my Democrat family members, like the one with the
we get the absolute worst politicians. The absolute worst.
I mean, there are like a lot of Italian Democrats. Peace Corps, one was Peace Corps in Vista. The one that was in Vista was the one that marched with Martin Luther King and had his poster put up in the South to be caught dead or alive. They said no, it was they were hung. We round this man up because we want to hang him because he was like this with Martin Luther King.
Yeah,
honor my cousin. He freaking started the HRC, which is the LGBT movement. Except when he started it, the goal was to remove labels. He goes, once we stop saying my black friend, my gay friend, once we stop using those labels and just say my friend and say their name and everyone is equal, then racism and bigotry and homophobia, all that stuff will be gone.
Which is the opposite of what they're doing
right.
now.
That's right. That's the way he started it. Yeah, and it's completely turned on its head. Yeah. And because that's what love is. That's what equality is. That's what seeing people as a rich person can look at a poor person and see an equal person, not say you're in a different class than me or you're the wrong ethnicity than me. That was perverted. But, he's a Democrat. When you're a Democrat, he has to learn that things turn on their head.
Yeah.
The Democrat leans towards fascism. And of course, FDR being their hero, who loved fascism and wanted to instill it here. And that's why he made the Depression go on so long. People were so desperate that they became disillusioned with capitalism and started to embrace socialism, fascism. He's the fascist. He's the one who brought it because he sent a whole team he called the Brain Trust to Mussolini's. He didn't send it to Nazi Germany to learn all about fascism in Italy, which the Italians got back at Mussolini. They didn't like Mussolini. They didn't like him working with or with the whole Hitler thing. The Italians were very, very upset. That's why they they shot him about 176 times or something, and then hung him upside. Yeah, they hung him upside down outside of his office. They hung him upside down on a meat hook. They turned him into, and then they dragged his body through the streets. That's how much they didn't like fascism. They had no idea. He came in. They liked him because he was very macho, and there was a film star that he was imitating. He would go like this, and Italians love it. They laugh.
Well, that's odd because
Italians like a show,
the German chancellor was imitating a film star too. That's kind of funny, or was a very big fan of the film star. Who's a mustache?
Oh, really, Charlie Chaplin? He was imitating Charlie Chaplin.
Well, he was a big fan. I know that. And
oh, yeah! Oh my God! He didn't wear the clothes of the hat. My asthma started.
and then Charlie Chaplin in his One Sound movie played him.
Oh, he did. I never saw that. Oh, gee, I just looked at you. You just taught me something, Schultz.
It can happen every now and then. Yeah.
Yeah. Why am I calling you Schultz? Do you know why I'm calling you Schultz? TikTok. It's a mystery. Does anybody out there know why I've just called him Schultz?
Charles Schultz?
No, not Charles Schultz. There was if they were all Jewish in real life. But they played.
The Three Stooges.
No. The show that I said if Hitler ever saw on TV, he'd say, "Who is this Klink? This is why I lost the war."
I never want to.
Hogan is at work. why I call do you know why I called you Schultz?
The character?
The character Schultz in Hogan's Heroes.
I never watched the show.
You never watched the show?
I did.
Do you know what his famous saying is?
Oh, what?
Is there any Italians out there that know why I'm saying this? See, look at this. Do you see my name here? Can you translate what I've decided to name myself?
I don't I don't know. Beautiful genius number one.
Number one Italia. Bella genio numero uno italiano. That's me. You are il non so nulla, which means I know nothing.
No, that's what I suspected. I went in with deflating atheism.
That's right. You don't know. I'm teaching you right.
Back in.
Funny. It just is funny. I thought it would be partly it's some miserable stuff we're talking about, a lot of miserable stuff, sad stuff, and why and nobody seems to care about anybody that people suffer. Doesn't matter what you have no idea until you hear a person's story what they've suffered, and most people had no idea what the Southern Italians had suffered. And I'm sure there's more. Of course, what I've suffered personally in this house with this family. Of course, and I'm going to die in this house this winter because I can't afford fuel because I'm shut off. It's like we don't know what somebody suffered to say you're evil. The psychologist would have said, you cannot say this to someone. You can't paint someone as evil. And sometimes they would say, usually it used to be, you have to learn about their lives and why they took this path and understand where they're coming from. And maybe they're only doing this because they had a hard home life and they need help along the way, or they need to be retrained. And so not everybody is evil, or sometimes it's because of their circumstances. But this is, we're born evil. And of course, unless we become a Democrat, we're going to stay literally.
Hello? Yes, it's battered wife syndrome, where we have to atone for the sins of Democrats by voting for Democrats. But yes, I'm appropriately making a pot of.
Okay, I'm back. Okay, we're back here. So anyway, I'm changing companies, and that's another. As far as my cell phone goes, I tried to get a cheaper plan, which everything get worse. But I'm gonna have to keep the phone because I got to pay for it for 2 years. Oh, you have frozen out. Weak. Let me change the.
I will be back.
Are you back? Are you there?
Hey, yes.
Okay.
Well, I think we need to wrap this up because
we should wrap this up. We should wrap. Well, anyway, you get the point. It's like the bottom line is we've all suffered, and we've all been good, we've all been bad, and we've all suffered. And where are the psychologists? See, you can't, especially you can't say this to a child. You can't teach a child in school that they're evil because it will break them. Yeah. I mean, I was told I was bad my whole life. I'm the bad girl. Even in school, nursery school, You get the little green dinosaur because you're the bad girl. I don't know what I did. I didn't know what she was talking about, but I always thought I was the bad girl. And I tried very hard to be good. You know, what does it take to be good? It says this girl's the good girl. She had a little blonde hair and little
it's
in her hair, and she was neat and clean all the time, and I wasn't. I said, what does it take to be good? But I always felt bad. See, there's CRT before CRT. You're evil, but the girl that she was very Aryan looking, you know, this clean little Aryan girl that was richer than I was. You can't do that because it screws it. People end up committing suicide.
Yeah.
You can't do, but you want, of course, all we have to do is become a Democrat. All we have to do is climate change, be a Democrat,
wear your mask,
whatever they say, do. And that will, what do you call it?
Put the Ukrainian flag in your Twitter bio along with your pronouns.
What do they call when you are
it's absolve. Yes.
Absolve us of our sin. Yes. Yeah. Absolve us of our sin. Yes. When we actually try to be good people and try to do the good thing all the time. I just make this world a better place. And it's like, and the richest people among us, we really are, I don't even want to say it, what they really want.
Yeah.
And you've got the money to help us all. And why, like, Elon, please, Elon, if you can hear my voice, please. I mean, it's like, you're like
remember what's a Princess Leia in Star Wars? You are
help me, Obi-Wan. The two Danishes stuck to her head. Help me, Obi-Wan. You're the only one. But it's like, I know there's a human in there because he's, though he's different. I know he's like the best one of them all.
Yeah.
Like, please, you are the wealthiest man in the world. You can do something. Pray. I'm going to get a statue, and I'm going to get some anointing. I'm going to pray. Not oil. Electricity. I'll we'd have a little statue that lights up. Yeah. Please, Saint Elon, save us, save humanity. Nobody's going to hear my voice. I'm sure YouTube is going to take me down after all the things that we've chatted. But we could be wrong. We could be wrong about everything, right? We don't know. It's just our opinion. Yeah. Just our opinion, except for the historical facts. It's just our opinion. I didn't even read that clip from Ross to News either. It's called Africa Source. I'll put the link on this video, Africa Source. There's a lot of things about the lynching, and then Africa Source talks about when Southern Italians were considered black. Anyway, are you there? No? I don't know if anybody can hear me. I'm talking, but I don't know if I'm getting through. I'm
making food.
Okay, you're making food. Okay, Mad Dog. Look, we haven't seen Mad Dog for a while. Yeah. Columbus Day was for the sake of an extra federal holiday. No, it actually wasn't. You missed the first part. Love y'all. Just popping in to say hi. Busy night. Elon is too busy shagging. Yeah. You must be talking about Elon Musk. Yeah, he just needs to pop in. Send a text message. Send a tweet. Yeah, send a tweet and tell them to stop. Oh, John Harrison. Yes, justice. Hugo Black, the secular humanist who calls secular humanism a religion, in his commentary on Torcaso v. Watkins. I've used that one to troll atheists a number of times. Rob must dress up as George Washington this Halloween. Or about as Hillary Clinton as George Washington. I think it was the second debate. Look at her. They made her hair and her outfit. She looks like, because she would be the first woman president. They actually made her look like Washington. Yeah, I'm like I wanted to play my if I play it. Tell me if this is I would have to connect, right? I would have to connect it if that's possible. Present, share screen, Chrome tab, Orleans. Would it be that? Thomasol slavery. It must be this. Okay, it's this, yeah. Oh, I forgot to talk about my Uncle Angelo's wedding. My Uncle Angelo, share. My Uncle Angelo met my Aunt Angie at a Knights of Columbus picnic, and there's nobody more Italian than my Uncle Angelo. As a Knights of Columbus picnic, it wasn't Columbus Day yet, and he was smiling at her. She was serving the food. She had nice legs. My grandmother said to Angelo, "I know who you're going to marry." And he went on this back in those days. Oh, let's make this. Here we go here. Back in those days, when you dated a girl, you would go to her house, you would sit on the couch, not close, and the parents were there, and you would talk to her, and in about 2 weeks' time, you got married. That's what was done back then. So he was going over there, doing the right thing to see her and talk to her. And her brother, I don't even think it was 2 weeks yet, came up to him and said, and so my Uncle Angelo was very smart. He didn't sound smart, but he was very clever. He said, "So when are you going to marry my sister?" It's as if he's been dating her for years and shagging her and not making her a reputable woman. It hasn't even been 2 weeks yet, and he's just going to the parents' house and sitting on the couch and talking to her without touching or getting close. And my Uncle Angelo said, "So, okay, are you there, Rob?"
Yes.
Okay, listen to this. This is what my Uncle Angelo says to Angie's brother. "You go find a girl, and we'll both get married on Columbus Day. We'll have a double wedding on Columbus Day." And this is the anniversary of their wedding. Sometimes the 12th is a Monday and would be Columbus Day. So he's saying, "You go find a girl." It's like, just find a girl and get married. I think the thinking and the way they thought and the way they did things back then, and it just so different. I remember he came over here and he told my Aunt Ann and my mother the story again. They've heard the story, and he said he was talking about how everybody loves Italian food and nobody likes English food. Who wants to eat that? And he goes, "Well, who goes to an English restaurant? Who do you know eat English food? Everybody loves Italian food." And he said, so she said, "So," after he tells the story about, because everything is about food. Food is the most important thing. Was the most important thing to my Uncle Angelo, because you can have sex with anyone, but not every woman can cook Italian food. So my Aunt Ann said, "So Angelo, you married an Italian girl?" And he said, "Sure, gotta marry Italian girl. No marry Italian girl. What do I eat?"
Yeah.
It's like,
No, well, wasn't it a broadside against Irish girls? He said it's a tragedy when an Italian boy marries an Irish girl.
yeah, that's right, because he knows that food. He's used to that food. And then if you have an Irish boy marry an Italian girl and he's getting all that good food,
Yeah.
then you got an Italian boy that's got to eat this Irish food. And he's suffering. And he goes, and there's a clip of Muhammad Ali talking about how he has to marry a black, not just a black woman, a black American woman from the South because of the music and the food.
Yeah.
And he talks about, because if you marry a Puerto Rican girl, she's going to want to listen to her Puerto Rican music.
Yeah.
He wants to eat the Puerto Rican, and you want to eat your food and listen to your. And he sounds like my Uncle Angelo, and he kind of looks like my Uncle Angelo. If you blow up the screen, this guy here is Angelo. He was so funny. And this beautiful man over here is the guy that is my uncle that looks like Superman, could have been a movie star. And as my mother said, I probably have cousins all over this country. He took off. He had a family up here, and then he left, and he had married somebody else and told somebody that his new wife, that his parents went back to Italy and died there. He didn't have a family. Don't know why he did. And he had two beautiful daughter and a son up here, and they had beautiful families, beautiful children, beautiful grandchildren. And he could, when you danced with him, I danced with him once at a wedding. It's true. My mother's right. It's like you're dancing on a cloud. He just moved you so smooth. And this guy, look how dark this guy is. Very dark, black curly hair, dark, light suit. He knew how to look good, and he was so handsome. Oh my God. He died at 89, and they put on his gravestone, he said 59. My Uncle Joe is here. This is my Uncle Joe. I worked for an Italian guy.
Well, you can't see the cursor, so you're going to have to explain where they are.
Oh, you can't see the cursor? Oh, you know what? I'll go to the picture. Wait, where's the picture? Where am I going here? How come I can't find the picture? Here it is. Oh, look, it's kind of blurry. Yeah, it's blurry. This is Uncle Vic. He's very handsome. But you see, the picture's blurry. This is my Uncle Angelo. Now, why is the picture blurry and there's nothing I can do about it? It's not. I tried to play it. Oh, that's my grandfather. That's my grandmother. And see, it's I can't get it clear. I was trying to get it clear. He's very handsome. That's my Aunt Ann. Right there, that's my Aunt Ann. She looks like me. She looks more like me than my mother looks like me. That's my grandfather. So look at my grandmother. She's a little Italian lady. Little Italian, very, very dark skinned. And this is money. They used to make corsages out of money. She was going to go to England to marry my Uncle Roy, who, by the way, attended. He was invited to the Queen's coronation. He attended the Queen's coronation.
Oh.
Yeah. And he was older than she was. He died of cancer a number of years ago. She lived to over 100. Yeah, so it's kind of interesting. He was a Navy man, and the Queen loved Navy men, and she was. Back then, they didn't have those big garden parties where everybody goes to. They kind of made it big, tried to like as many people as possible to go to the garden parties. Back then it was different. You would be invited to a dinner, or you would be invited to a more intimate setting. And she was invited to a garden party that wasn't really a garden party. It was for naval officers, and her table was right next to the Queen's. So it was a very small, intimate setting, and she kept looking at her. And my Uncle Roy goes, "Anne, you stop! It's rude. You can't. You have to stop staring at her." And my Aunt Anne goes, "Oh, but she's so beautiful. She's so beautiful. I can't stop staring at her." Oh my God! So it's like she actually got to, in a when it was harder to see the Queen, she actually, because she loved Navy men, she was closer to Navy, and he was tall, blue-eyed, blonde hair, and that was the Queen's type, and that was my Aunt Anne's type, and my aunt married him at the Woolworth. I don't know if you both, I forget the name, the woman who owned Woolworth Mansion. It's a famous name. And she walked down the staircase, and she was holding daisies. I mean, my aunt is such a beautiful woman. Too bad the pictures are not coming out clear. But God, my Aunt Anne and my Uncle Vic were gorgeous. But my Uncle Angelo, oh, he has a funny face. Like he's just fun to look at. He's fun to be. I mean, he's just always. You always give the kids kazoos and bazooka bubble gum, and we read the comics, and he'd tell us bad jokes about corn and pie, and corn was poo-poo and pie was pee-pee, and he would laugh all through the joke. He would just, laugh so hard he could barely get a word out, because he just thought the jokes were so funny. But he knew kids like jokes about corn and pie. It's like that was funny to kids. So he was such a God. I miss my uncle. I miss all my uncles. Actually, I miss them all. They were so unique and so funny. I remember my Uncle Jimmy, who was also in that picture, who knew all the politicians. He's the one whose son started the HRC, LGBT, and the other son went off to be in the Peace Corps. Then he became a professor. His grandson, it was doing a school. Was doing a school project, and you're supposed to ask like your grandparent, an old person, about the past, questions about the past. And he said, well, who's the best president? And he said, John F. Kennedy. And it's my Uncle Jimmy's finished eating a turkey dinner. He came at like 4:00 in the morning to start making turkey dinner in a 3-piece suit. He's lying on the couch. He's got his suspenders on because he's got this belly. And he said, John F. Kennedy was the best goddamn president of the United States we've ever had. And they shot him. And the way he said it, I mean, he said, everybody just busted out laughing. It's like the best goddamn president, and they shot him. It's just the way he said things was funny.
Yeah.
Like, just the way he put the thing together. It was like, usually when we talk about John F. Kennedy's death, we don't kind of put it in that terminology either. So these are good. They were good people. They were really good family men, except for my Uncle Vic, who had more than one family. And didn't tell, only one family knew about the other family. But he was beautiful. All these men went to war. All these men fought for the country. All these men fought for the freedom of this world, and we've thrown it away. We've pissed it down the toilet. It's extremely sad. Extremely sad. So give us, no, they're not going to give us another Italian. They're not going to give us Columbus Day back. They're not going to remind anybody that a class of people who, unless they're Democrat, they want you to believe are privileged. They've always been privileged. But like I said, no group of people, except maybe royalty, who got all their wealth from war and keeping such a stronghold on the people, though you had the threefold death. You know, I mean, you go against the king and that's it. You're beheaded. You get the threefold death. You know, the whole Braveheart thing. They did that all the time. So these people, and they believe that they deserve to be up there because God put them there. God wants them to be king. So I remember the Queen's grandmother, Queen Mary, taught her everything. And Queen Mary said, no matter what, the monarchy must survive. You must make sure you do everything, that the monarchy must survive. No matter what happens. Why? Why do you have a dysfunctional family and a person who clearly doesn't care about people, and neither does his son or even his defective son? They don't care about people. They're not saving the environment. They're actually, with the winter, all this stuff is poisoning and killing the environment. These people, because God wants these people on the to do what? There's only one throne he should sit on, and it's not the one that he's sitting on. I saw pictures of, what was it? Epstein and that woman that he was with in Seville in the throne room, sitting on the thrones. The king and, the Queen's throne and Prince Philip's throne. It's, at that time was the Queen. Hanging out with who's it? Charles. I'm sure Andrew must have been there, but Charles, this was like a get together with Charles. They were in and out. Maxwell was in and out of that all the time. But Seville, with his, what he did, Jimmy Seville, it's like he didn't know. There's no way the prince could have known. He asked him about advice about how to get the people and to do things. I forget what it was. All these things he asked about advice, how to get things done and to get the people on board with all this stuff. And so he was taking advice from this horrible person. And I'm sure you know all about Jimmy Seville. He has something in common with Epstein. Are we supposed to be able to, can we say those names? Are those names okay to say? So these are the people that God wants on the throne who happen to have all these. How could you be that wrong? And really, there's no way you can't know because of the, what's the name of the group that they work for the monarchy, and everybody they bring in to the palace, and everybody it's like their spy. It's
the Pinkerton.
It's not MI5, MI6. I forget what it's called, but they go through their whole history.
The Pinkertons.
It's not. No, it's a different name. But they make sure they know the background on everybody. But how could Prince Charles have known, or the Queen, or anybody have known about these people, what they were doing? And that's what, when you give somebody a knighthood, you're supposed to look at their whole, who they are and what they've done. And it's really hard to believe because they have these spies just to sure that the background on all these people is known. And they turned out to be not just bad, but really bad. But of course, because of climate change, they're taking away our fuel, and we can't afford it. And there isn't even going to be enough food because they don't care about growing it. So there's no surprise that they would hang around people like this. Look at what they're doing to the whole world. I mean, there's just no surprise. And, it's like I looked up at the sky and I said, God, you got to come back. You have to come back. You have to come back, God. You have to come back. This is the end of the world. You got to come back. You got to come now, because a lot of people are going to die. And it just seems like there's nobody standing up and saying no. And this country wouldn't have gone down the toilet if, and they won't say anymore because we're not allowed to. But things go the way they do. And we have to pray. Well, anyway, I think I forget. There was something else, but it doesn't matter. This has gone along long enough. I'm always thinking that people saying, oh, she just thinks the Italians have. No, I'm not saying that. I'm saying that you're taking a day away and you're vilifying, because of Columbus Day, and the Indigenous people, yes, they suffered. I agree they suffered. But you have to say, and they did suffer, the Spanish and the Portuguese, but they suffered on the hands of somebody else. And Columbus wasn't even I mean, it's like these people suffered, give them a holiday, let them have their holiday, but nobody cares. They just want to vilify, and they don't care to know the truth. And we are living in such dangerous times that the only thing I have in my head is people just need to be educated on the truth, to be reminded, like of Diana. It's like, why are you vilifying a girl who is 19 that you didn't inform?
Okay, well, I'm going to have to go out soon.
Okay, yeah, this is like I'm summing it up now. This is the end now, okay? But I'm saying this is the reason why I'm kind of like I've gone around and given this big picture of because I know people, because the what do you call it? The drum beat is always going. Mm-hmm. You're talking about white people who are suffered, but look at these people, and these people have suffered. It's like, I know about all the people, and I care about everybody who suffered. And the point is everybody suffered, and they won't let you say. They won't let you know the truth or say the truth. And the only way we can fix anything, if there's any hope of changing, is that people have to know the truth and the history that's been completely lost. Mm-hmm. And this is history that's been lost. So I suggest Thomas Sowell. Get the full history of slavery and everything else. He goes into a lot of stuff. Todd, definitely listen to Thomas Sowell. It's hours worth of podcast, but you will get very educated on a lot of things.
And he has a way of explaining things that just makes it sound like common sense.
It's true. Yes.
He's a brilliant man, but everything he says sounds like common sense.
Absolutely. Very well put. Yeah, that's exactly the truth. More people need to listen to true educated voices. But hopefully I've enlightened somebody out there. And thank you for joining here. I know nothing. Roberto, I know nothing.
I'm here to be the
you know stuff, and you look good tonight. I'm glad you took your picture down because you look better. The picture's terrible. It's just awful. Very blank, and you look good. So that's good, and you knew some great stuff that you shared, and hopefully people out there learned something. And thank you for joining us.
Thank you, everyone in the comments. Yes.
Yes.
Sorry, I couldn't type in my responses. But have a good night and God bless. And pray.
Okay.
And pray.
And pray. That's right. And pray. We should start doing prayers again. We'll start doing our prayers again. Okay. Good night.
Good night, everyone.